Science and technology and innovation, these are indispensable in the modern economy, in the modern world.
The problem being that, while we have our PhDs here, there aren't enough of us. And everywhere else in the world, for research to be successful, you need a complete research group.
It's very important that the PASA members and scientists based in the Philippines are continuously in contact, so we will know the needs of the Filipinos and opportunities that the Filipinos can have to do science with their PASA counterparts.
I think that is one of the good programs that they keep on supporting some of the initiatives of our researchers and scientists here in the country.
The role of this cooperation among these government agencies really is to be able to attract science and technology global-based companies to set up shop here. And that is really key in terms of developing the science and technology innovation ecosystem in the country.
We really need to ratchet up the appreciation, the recognition of the importance of science and technology and innovation.
And we are all trying to attain what we call the common good, the greater, higher, long-term good of the Filipino people.
Morning, everyone. So we still have some time, so we'll wait for the others to come in. And while we're waiting, so I just wanted to remind everyone to keep their microphones on mute as we listen to our speaker today. Should you have any questions, feel free to type it down in the chat box, which can be found at the panel of your Zoom. Or you can raise your hand later on if you want to interact directly with our speaker. So this particular webinar is being broadcasted live also on YouTube. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, so this is the regular Friday webinars of the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering. And of course, we do have many more activities. And if you want to know more about the organization and you want to be updated on what our activities are, you can always check our website at paasa.org. So we have a few more minutes before we begin the lecture, but perhaps I can start. So perhaps I can already begin. So this morning, so welcome everyone to our Friday webinars. This morning, we have with us a speaker who will talk about Research in Community Health Program in Barranquilla, Colombia, the challenges and opportunities. But before that, I would like to call the president of PAASE, Mario, to give us the opening remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Good evening from here in the United States. We are lucky this morning today because we have a very special lecturer. I'd like to thank, of course, Dr. Eileen Navarro Almario for her foresight, in designing this small series of lectures on health-related research. And in particular, today we'll be benefited by, the wisdom of our guest lecturer from South America. And we would like also to thank our partners, our members from De La Salle University, Dr. Kay Abiso, the Dean of the College of Engineering, and also Dr. Yasmin Rothilio, who will be co-moderating this morning's event. For those who don't know what PAASE is the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering. It's a 42-year-old organization of scientists and engineers of Philippine descent. It's been here for a while, but in the past few years, we've been having very, very active, set of lectures and other activities that are meant to increase, the interaction of scientists and engineers within the Philippines, between the Philippines and the United States, of course, and other countries. And of course, now we are beginning to reach out to our fellow scientists, engineers, scholars from other parts of the world. So I'd like to again greet you. Good morning or good evening, wherever you are. And I'd like to give the virtual floor back to Kay.
Thank you very much, Mario. So let me just share my screen again. To introduce our speaker for today, I'd like to call Yasmin.
Welcome, everyone. We have a distinguished speaker for today. So Dr. Carlos Cure. So he said it's pronounced Cure, but the English version is Cure, Dr. Cure. He is the medical director of Biomelab Research Center in Colombia. His studies included a fellowship in Madrid. He initiated studies on thyroid pathologies in children and has continued his work on endocrine disorders over the past 25 years. His work contributed to establishing population bone densitometry standards, gaining recognition in international meetings on bone metabolism. His work also includes multi-center randomized clinical trials on this endocrine disorders. So his present focus is on determinants of health from the rich data set he develops over the last 18 years and the development of new prospective studies in the Hispanic population. This work also fosters the training of MPH students with his son Pablo, who is on the faculty at George Washington University and the program director of the Division of Clinical Innovation at the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences. So his work is more on the population studies and of interest to public health specialists. So we now welcome Dr. Carlos Cure.
Thank you very much, Yasmin. Dr. Cure, you may now share your screen.
Thank you very much, Jasmine, for your presentation. A very generous presentation. And I would like to thanks to the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering for inviting me to this important event. But also many thanks to Mario Santo Domingo for inviting me, and also thanks to my dear friend Eileen Navarro Almario, that is supporting all the time for everything that we are trying to get. I think that I have to put the...
Kindly click on slideshow.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Ready. Gallup International survey defined that the happiness index in 2013 was the most happy people in the world was the Colombian people. And in Barranquilla, the happiness index was 83%. Today, the last survey, we was ranked in the 21 position, and Philippines in the 60th position. But anyway, we are still the most happy people in the world, and I am sure that you will also do the same. Barranquilla is an important river port and an important seaport of Colombia. The Magdalena River, one of the most caudalous river in Colombia, that has 1,540 kilometers and crosses 11 departments, more than the half of Colombia, and flows into the Caribbean Sea in Barranquilla. And Barranquilla is one of the most four important cities of Colombia, located at the north of Colombia and at the Caribbean coast. We really want to talk about research, but in all the sense of the word, because there are many aspects of the research that not always are easy to get. The community research participation from Barranquilla complement the local research capability with a global expertise and tools, especially to define standards, to identify local needs, because not always we have the possibility to organize and start studies with very complicated protocols. And the priorities in the health in Barranquilla is maybe covering all the aspects, starting with the communicables diseases like chikungunya, Zika, and the pandemic that affected all the world, as we know, the COVID. Here we known and are aware that we say that we are a lab for live lab of all the infectious disease, because we are located in a tropical in the tropic, and of course that we every year are receiving all kind of virus and infections that we of course that have to share with us. For example, Zika, chikungunya, and the non-communicable diseases like metabolic disease, cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, and of course the fractures. Colombia developed a local solution through the participation in research, in clinical research, and of course also in the clinical trials. That is a very important source of information for us. We start in the 80s. We start working in the thyroid and especially with the novel dynamic test for evaluation of the endocrine system. And one of these novel tests was the stimulation the measure and stimulation of TSH, prolactin, and some other hormones, all of the known today as dynamic test for evaluation all endocrine systems. But when we start working with this novel test, we notice that many of our patients had higher or high level of, for example, TSH or prolactin, and especially in two main areas of diseases like the growth retardation or children with short stature was one of the most important, and also in the area of the infertility. We start presenting our works in many of the congress, meetings, conference in Colombia, and showing our results, sharing with the endocrine community, and of course that that was not maybe accepted for the majority of the endocrinologists. And in our work, we presented in 1984 one study of investigation study in which we describe the minimal thyroid dysfunction in children with short stature. We were awarded in 1984 with the in the Colombian Congress of Internal Medicine, and that was one of our first intervention in this field. After this, some years after, in 1995, we get to publish our work in following these cases, and we in the European Journal of Clinical Investigation we send a paper that thyroid replacement therapy on the stature of Colombian children with minimal thyroid dysfunction. And this was very important because we can demonstrate that the growth of the children that received the thyroid replacement therapy was higher than the group that did not receive. And at the final height, it could be translated in centimeters in the chart, and that represent 5.1 centimeters for girls and 5.6 centimeters for boys, higher than the. In another paper, some investigators in European Journal of Endocrinology also indicate that the treatment of children with subclinical hypothyroidism with signs or symptoms or goiter or one TSH more than 10 was indicated the therapy that would be beneficial when the subclinical hypothyroidism was associated with short stature. And and this is one of our patients that we can see just at the inspection that the enlarging of their thyroid gland and had an TSH of 7.1 over our normal range of our population. But 20 years after, in a consensus statement, subclinical thyroid dysfunction, joint of American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists, American Thyroid Association, and the Endocrine Society defined that subclinical hypothyroidism was when TSH level was high with normal T4 or free T4, and that the prevalence of this was in the global community of 4 to 10%, and in the postmenopausal woman older than 60 was 20%. That was very important because now the subclinical thyroid dysfunction, subclinical hypothyroidism was accepted officially with the endocrine authorities and thyroid authorities. The conclusion of that consensus was that both in the practicing and academic endocrinologists, the potential benefits of the early detection and treatment of subclinical thyroid dysfunction significantly outweighed the potential side effects. That was very important for us because we were working in this way, and we are still working in the same way. In 1993, we get the first densitometer in Colombia, the lunar DPX Plus, and then we start working especially at femoral neck or hip and spine, and we add some acquisition that was not popular and was not accepted because nobody knows what was its use in the clinical practice, and of course that in fractures of this person. First that we did was to organize the information, not only to give a report of bone or DEXA test, but also to evaluate with all the information on the medical history. And when we were advancing in the more important database, we start to evaluating, and for example, we working in the field of multiparity and bone protection, and we found that the bone mineral density increase with each delivery until age of 69, and the fracture prevalence and risk among the multiparos was lower than in nulliparous woman. This conclusion, we conclude that maybe the hormone replacement therapy for postmenopausal woman could be delayed until 65 years of age. Of course, that this was before of the publication of the White study. another thing that we was very interested in evaluate was the relationship between bone and multiparity. What happened with the woman with each one of their pregnancies, and then we found something that we did not expect it, and that was that the bone mineral density was higher with each of the several pregnancies, and we then describe this as gestational bone mass peak, and we published it on the International Gynecologist and Obstetric, and we have maybe get about 78 citation of this. This is the only one description of the gestational bone mass peak that is very different of the known bone mass peak in of the growth and development. But also because it was a protection for fracture. We also start working with a very important friend that was from Argentina, that the Dr. Jose Luis Ferretti, and they were a very important investigator, research, and we start working with our database because we have a big number of the result of body composition that almost nobody had in anywhere. And then we start working with them, and then we study the next study of the muscle-bone relationship in the whole body and limbs in men, pre- and postmenopausal women. This was very interesting because we found a linear correlation, important linear correlation in all of them, but with a different ordinated to the origin, and was pointing more in the whole body, DEXA whole body composition, more with a premenopausal woman, significantly lower men and postmenopausal woman. Also, the lean mass, because that was one of our question was why the osteoporosis was and still is or are evaluated just measuring the bone, when we have to accept that the important interaction between lean body mass with bone, and then in this relationship between muscle and bone that was linear. First, as I said before, and the total body was for premenopausal and significantly lower for men and postmenopausal women. That was the same with the lower limbs, that punctuate the same was a linear correlation, but first the premenopausal, significantly lower postmenopausal, and men. That talk about or suggest the mechanostatic theory, and where hormone plays a very important role. But at the upper limbs, the things were different. They keep the linearity, but the punctuation of origin was first for men and followed by the premenopausal and postmenopausal significantly lower. That shows us that in the upper limbs, maybe was more important the strength of the muscle than the action of the hormones. Also, we was working in this field, and we published an absorptiometric assessment of muscle-bone relationship in human. And that it was very interesting because the relationship give us the possibility of the anthropometric diagnosis of osteopenia. And in summary, we describe the issues of osteopenia, that means low muscle mass and low bone mass. And this disease, osteopenia, was different than the metabolic osteopenia, and in the practical point of view, means that this disease of osteopenia don't was maybe candidate for pharmacotherapy as could be with the metabolic osteopenia, but just with exercise or just with physiotherapy. We published the reference chart of the relationship between bone mineral content and lean mass. This is our reference chart that I think that is the only one that is published in the literature. And when we establish our normal values with the Z score upward and downward. Another very interesting study that we was evaluating was the association between low lean body mass and osteoporotic fractures after menopause. Everybody knows that one of the risk factor for fractures is the low weight. And in this study, we evaluate this between the low lean body mass, and we found that in a number of subjects evaluated in the premenopause woman, there were not difference in the whole body score of bone mineral content, lean mass, and no difference, including the type 1 fracture and type 2 fracture. Type 2 fracture was fractures of osteoporotic origin. But in postmenopausal women, there were a significantly difference between the correlation or the relationship in bone mineral content versus lean mass in the type 2 fractures. And in postmenopausal type 2 fractures, depending on the site, we found that they were lower the relationship between bone and limb mass in all the fracture, but specifically more higher difference, significant difference with the hip fractures. That means that almost all fractures associated with a low relationship occur in postmenopausal women, but not in premenopausal women. And particularly the low muscle mass itself could contribute to bone loss in osteoporotic fracture sites. So with this result, we maybe confirm that the low weight is a very important risk factors for fractures, but specifically in the postmenopausal woman. Following with our interest of study parity, we published, Pablo, my son, start working with parity, and some others. We thought that, for example, in the bone mass peak and the reduction of bone fracture was related with a high million of estrogen that every pregnancy put in the the mother is receiving a big quantity of estrogen, and maybe it would be the hypothesis of the bone protection. And then we thought that maybe we could find another relationship, but what we found was that parity and diabetes risk in Hispanic women from Colombia, in a cross-sectional evidence, and multiparity was associated with 5 to 7-fold increased risk of diabetes. We also was working on the endothelial dysfunction or endothelial function, and we was worried about the influence of the oil and the oil and the different kind of oils in the not only in the endothelial dysfunction, but in the health of the people. And we make a study, and it was published in where olive, soybean, and palm oils intake have similar acute detrimental effect over the endothelial function in healthy young subjects. In conclusion, we demonstrate that deep frying process cause comparable changes in the biochemical characteristics of palm or olive or soybean oils. And the high fat meals prepared with fresh or cooked produces the similar detriment of the other. And I think that one important thing was that the similar detrimental acute effect in endothelial function independently of the type of oil used or its deep fry levels. So all of that seems to be the same. And in this meantime, we was awarded in some instance, for example, in the Aurelio Rapado International Osteoporosis Foundation in Venezuela, Gunther from in the Argentine International and Mineral Society in Japan, and Bone Mineral Research in Osaka, and in Greece. And the last, our very important award on behalf of MATIC group was our award of Paul Doodle White in November 2018 in the American Heart Association scientific session. The Carnival of Barranquilla is an oral and intangible patrimony of humanity for the UNESCO. Then now this was maybe what I would call clinical research. That clinical research that was maybe organized and developed by us. But another very important source of information was the clinical trials. And we participate as research center, and I as a principal investigator in more than 60 clinical trials, very interesting, but I only would like to mention some of them. For example, in Jupiter, in where the use of rosuvastatin in the primary prevention of cardiovascular events was in subjects with low levels of LDL cholesterol, but elevated levels of C-reactive protein. That was a very interesting and very important result of the importance of the rosuvastatin, not only with a high level of cholesterol or LDL cholesterol, but also with normal level of cholesterol and elevated level of C-reactive protein. The other very interesting study was the HOPE-3 and blood pressure lowering in intermediate risk person without cardiovascular disease. And the conclusion was that therapy with candesartan and hydrochlorothiazide was not important with a lower rate of major cardiovascular event than placebo in persons at intermediate risk that don't have cardiovascular disease. A very interesting conclusion was that in those with blood pressure more or equal of 140 millimeter or more benefit of the therapy, but not benefit on cardiovascular event in those with an initial systolic pressure of less than 140 millimeters. The same HOPE-3 investigation results, the blood pressure and cholesterol lowering in person without cardiovascular disease, and conclusion was the combination of rosuvastatin and candesartan plus hydrochlorothiazide was associated with a significantly lower rate of cardiovascular event in intermediate risk person that not have cardiovascular disease. And the cholesterol lowering in intermediate risk without cardiovascular disease, the conclusion was that treatment with rosuvastatin was significant, resulting in significant lower risk of cardiovascular event in an intermediate risk ethnical different population. Changing to another pathology as osteoporosis, we participated in a very interesting study, clinical trials of odanacative to reduce the risk of fractures in osteoporosis postmenopausal woman. And the treatment with odanacative, that is an cathepsin K inhibitor, reduce bone resorption while maintaining bone formation. And odanacative reduced the risk of fractures, but was associated with an increased cardiovascular event, especially strokes in postmenopausal women. The sponsor decided that they would no longer pursue development of odanacative treatment. I think that it was a very, very, very interesting molecule that could be very useful for many, many persons. But that was one sponsor decision. The same on the field of osteoporosis, Amgen in the 337 and another 149, and in that two very important studies. One of them framed in where romosozumab subcutaneous monthly for 12 months, followed by denosumab each 6 months, was very important to get and to maintain the improvement of the bone densitometry, bone density, and the protection for fractures. And the other one important study was in the ART, in where the romosozumab followed by alendronate was very important, because you know, the time of treatment for romosozumab, that is dual medication, is just for 1 year. Then you have to follow the treatment, and alendronate is a very good alternative, and is one of the known sequential therapy of osteoporosis. Another study, TECOS, with sitagliptin, rewind was GLP-1 dulaglutide, that is for especially for reduce the cardiovascular major events, was very important. This is a dance, very traditional dance of the Carnival of Barranquilla. And there are another another important source of information are the observational or population health studies. One of the most important is the PURE. The PURE global perspective urban rural epidemiology study have many conclusions that we will see very shortly. But in this time, one of most important information that we have is that the combination therapy was very low, 27.5%, and significantly lower in rural areas among those with a low income. That means that all of this result, all of this knowledge of research in a different area, but in this case, in the cardiovascular disease and cardiovascular mortality, is not being applying in the community, and that is very important to correct. Also, the spectrum of dyslipidemia in Colombia from the PURE study, and the prevalence that was found of dyslipidemia is an important health problem, because 87.57% the prevalence in the Colombian adult. and the most common lipid abnormality was high non-HDL cholesterol with 75.3% relevant cardiovascular risk factor. And self-reported prevalence of chronic not communicable in the pure Colombian study was defined, but this is one important data that we will see more ahead. The pure also found the fruit, vegetable, and legume intake and cardiovascular disease and death in 18 countries in the pure prospective cohort study. And the higher total fruit, vegetable, and legume intake was inversely associated with major cardiovascular disease and cardiovascular mortality and not cardiovascular mortality and total mortality. So the higher total fruit consumption is very important for health and for preventing cardiovascular disease. Also association of dietary nutrients with blood lipids and blood pressure in 18 countries in the pure study, and it was defined that the high carbohydrate intake was associated with lower total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, but also with the APO cholesterol HDL and ApoB. But higher intakes of total fat, saturated fatty acid, and carbohydrate were associated with higher blood pressure, and whereas higher protein intake was associated with lower blood pressure. This information is very useful for in order to define the important management of recommendation for the population, especially in the lifestyle approach. Also, the effect of the physical activity on mortality and cardiovascular disease in 130,000 people from 17 high-income, middle-income, and low-income countries in the pure study. And the conclusion was that higher physical activity was associated with lower risk of cardiovascular disease, cardiovascular mortality in high-income, middle, and low-income countries. We also found that, for example, that the grip strength that was measured in all the subject of the study in all the world, it was found that have a prognostic value with cardiovascular and disease and mortality. And for example, the greatest strength was inversely associated with all-cause mortality, cardiovascular mortality, no cardiovascular mortality, myocardial infarction. But some important thing is that grip strength was a stronger predictor of all-cause and cardiovascular mortality than systolic blood pressure. And in one study that we made with the DEXA result of 600 of subjects, we found that there were the correlation between the grip strength and the result of DEXA lean body mass, and that means that the data is not only the mass, the lean mass, but also it means that is equivalent to the grip strength. This is our Caribbean fishing and red snapper. This is my son. Let's move to the ideal studies that are very difficult to organize and to get a sponsor to develop these studies. And I just want to mention 3 of them, like for example, Baltimore longitudinal study of aging is the world longest running study of human aging, and of course that have all the support of the authorities, the government, and of everything, but is ideal to get one of that. For example, the very famous Framingham Heart study and the historical perspective that started in 1948 and is about 72 years since the first examination, and the Rotterdam study that we have reviewing, and of course that have teach a lot for us, especially in our interest of analysis and get statistical and research information of our proud the prevalence of metabolic disease and their influence on macrovascular disease and fractures in Barranquilla. This is the source of the name, and we started in 2003 the PRO study, and the importance of the MATIC group, of course, that is very interesting possibility to get many important things. And I am very grateful with the director of the cardiovascular division of NIH, Dr. Ahmed Hassan, a very dear friend for mine and for us, but also with Eileen Navarro Almario, that is permanently supporting in everything and all things, every time, and Anwar Hussein, Georgie, Sacco, Joan, Michael Domansky, Anna Ketterman, and Victor Krensley, between all of the rest of the MATIC dear friends that I'm very grateful with them. But we have a big spread way that with the machine learning and all of the studies and analysis that we are planning to follow, a part of that we have done up to date. We was awarded from American Heart Association in November 2018 in our first study that we sent it and was accepted the abstract and was awarded in our first participation. And the product composition is 12,000 subjects and about 400 variables. And the study of community where we complete the medical history, and that is the starting of anything that you want to get, because if you organize things, you with in the mean of the time passes, we can get interesting results. Now we are in our about 19 years of follow-up, and that is very interesting because it is a long way that we are walking up. And we have the medical history, 12,000, and with mostly female, and fractures 17%, metabolic study with about 32 of the population, and DEXA femur in the 50% of the population, and cholesterol also in 30% of the population. But our initial cross-sectional result of prevalence at the baseline diseases, I just want to mention, for example, coronary heart disease, myocardial infarction, and stroke. In the self-reported prevalence of pure in Colombia, based in all 11 departments, the prevalence of diseases, we can see that coronary heart disease 2.4%, stroke, heart failure 1.5%. That is almost the same. But one important one important thing that we got was the mortality study, because in this moment we have in the PROUD we have the first phase, that is population study but cross-sectional, and we intend to complete the follow-up to make the longitudinal follow-up study, and that is one of our challenges. But in this moment, with the mortality study, that we got the census date in August 2017, now we have a follow-up longitudinal study and in a very, very important follow-up of many years. Here is the what I mentioned before, our presentation in the American Heart Association, and the identification of gender-specific predictors of all-cause mortality using machine learned techniques. Data from Barranquilla, Colombia. Here, then, we are in this evolution of the study, and we are trying to get information of the all subjects and up to date for today, and also we are trying to get information of the mortality study, but with census date of in 2021. It is not as difficult, but it's not easy to get this for every people. Then what we think in evaluating the cross-sectional is that we have maybe for example in the adolescent BMI of Tyros, he found that the cardiovascular mortality in Jewish in Israel population, followed by 17 years, they found that there was a very short correlation between BMI and mortality or cardiovascular disease, except some of the and then we, with this validation of cross-sectional studies, with longitudinal studies, and validation cross-sectional study with meta-analysis, long-term longitudinal study, we found that were similar to our cross-sectional data, and we validate our results with a follow-up, long-term follow-up. We also have participated in chikungunya, in Zika, because are two very important studies and two clinical trials that have ended in January and February, and chikungunya arthritis mechanism in America, and the neurodevelopment abnormalities in Zika exposed without congenital Zika disease, and sequential neuroimaging of the fetus and newborn with utero in Zika virus exposure, and we are always following that children's this and the next year, and very important. And the clinical trial in 2021 with ACT with Canadian COVID-19 collaboration with McMaster University, where we try the colchicine and aspirin in order to know if it was important to protect in the treatment of the infected COVID subject. And another clinical trial, fenofibrate as metabolic intervention, Fermin, that use the fenofibrate to control or avoid the virus. And in Colombia, as in all the world, we have been living with the COVID-19 since 2 years ago, and we had in Colombia a very important evaluation. The first wave in January 22, the second wave in December 2020, and the third wave in May and June of 2021. And the number of deaths was very important. Now we have about 140,000 deaths in Colombia. But in Barranquilla was different, because we had the first wave, very, very important, but not as high. But after that, we controlled the pandemic, and the virus keep low in infected. And the second wave was a very, very, very small wave, but the third wave was very important, and maybe because we lose our protection, immunity, and the number of deaths was similar. The first wave, and after a very good control for all the time, except in May, June, that we had a wave and a big peak of death. Now we are with Omicron and COVID, control in all the country, and I hope that never come again, but that is not true. And this is in a newspaper collaboration of one infectious specialist, Dr. Álvaro Villanueva, that say when behavior can save us. And when behavior can save us, is still valid for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Cure, for that extensive review of your work. 60 clinical trials. Wow. Are there any questions from the participants? Any questions? I do have a question, Dr. Cure. Oh, these are nice. Dancing.
This is our first presential carnival after pandemic, but fortunately we don't have any surge, any peak or any wave after this. This was in March, last March. Please.
Yes, I do have a quick question. In that study with the increased fruits and vegetables, fruits and legumes, did you differentiate between meat diet and vegetarian diet? You know, that fruit vegetable study and legumes?
Pardon me, could you repeat?
Oh, sure. In the fruit and vegetable legume study, you know, you advise increasing that. Did that study include a substratification into a meat diet or a vegetarian diet? Any kind of diet, so long as you add fruits and vegetables, will have a, you know, good effect.
It was because in the protocol we have a survey, a nutritional survey, very complete, and then that was processed and statistically, and they make the analysis and compare with all this, but this is because it's for a very big population of 130,000 of subjects in the world in 18 countries, and that nutritional survey was applied for everybody.
So no, that was the only thing that they saw to be positive.
Yes.
But that's a lot. That's a lot of
Yes.
trial subjects.
Yes. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much. I also noticed that Dr. Danz, a Filipino cardiologist, was in one of your studies. I saw his name there, the study on rosuvastatin and hydrochlorothiazide. Yeah, Antonio Danz is a Filipino cardiologist.
Good.
That's a very interesting study.
Yes, HOPE3 is a very interesting study because it was the selection criteria was for subjects that do not maybe were not candidate for medical treatment. That means that it's like if has the cholesterol a little high or the blood pressure a little high, or that was the criteria that was not the indication, a formal indication to treatment. And the conclusion was that including that intermediate risk subject and with no cardiovascular disease were benefit with the treatment, but specifically with statin, and also for blood pressure, high blood pressure. But if the blood pressure was higher than 140, but not if the blood pressure was lower than 140.
140.
Systolic blood pressure.
Thank you, Dr. Kure. I don't see any more questions, but you know.
I have a question.
There.
Yes. Hello, Dr. Kure. This is Mario Santo Domingo. You mentioned a study, on a longitudinal study in Baltimore, one of the longest that you said, right? About aging. I happen to be part of another longitudinal study, the Handel study. I wonder if you are aware of the healthy aging. The full name is Healthy Aging in Diverse Neighborhoods. So it's a study of aging in the context of diversity. And I remember that I was still a student, you know, when I was part of the team of sociologists who was part of that research, and we were looking at markers in the neighborhood, you know, like for example, broken windows, and some other neighborhood characteristics that were then correlated with, you know, many different health-related factors. I wonder if in any of your studies, you are also looking at like the sociological or social psychological dimensions of health and aging.
Very interesting. I mentioned this study because it's really is the ideal way to know the health of our community and know many things of for example, of aging in this case, but that is not easy. That is not easy. It's very, very, very. You need to get the support for everybody, and for the authority of the city, authority of the university, etc. And then it is sometimes very far from of our possibilities. The other thing is to organize for example, our proud study was organized with, I don't know, we were working in clinical trials, and we have a research center very active, and we always have been the top recruiters, and we had some team, some staff, and what we did was to dedicate some of the time to try to know what was the identification of the disease of our community. And we are going very, very, very at a very low levels, and we hope that with this validation of longitudinal studies with cross-sectional studies, it could be very interesting, because it is going to give us more, you know, the cross-sectional are not very, very, very well positioned, but I think that maybe they could be, and the information, as we talked with Eileen, the information that we got with a clinical trial is very important, because we can apply it of our community. But one thing that I would like to express is something that I mentioned at the beginning, is that really the importance of the research, if we can get that the community benefit from this. And sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes we are maybe thinking and say, we know a lot of this pathology. We know how we have to manage, for example, this osteoporosis or this cardiovascular, but in the real world, it doesn't happen, and never apply the new information of very important research or investigation. And that is one thing that we have to keep in mind.
Thank you, Dr. Kure.
Thank you to you, Mario. Thank you for asking.
So there are no more questions. So Dr. Santo Domingo.
Yes, so if there are no more questions, actually we'll be sharing this recorded video for many other potential audience to see. Probably show the teachers will show this in their classes. So we would really like to thank you, Dr. Kure, for taking the time to share with us your broad knowledge and your many years of research in this area. And I'd like to thank again Dr. Eileen Navarro Almario for initiating this lecture, and of course Dr. Yasmin Ronquillo. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure listening to you. And I guess with that, we will be closing the program, Dr. Ronquillo.
Are we going to announce the next activities of PAASE? Or?
Yeah, that's right. Maybe you can announce the activity to this tonight. Would you like?
Oh yeah, tomorrow morning, Dr. Baldomero Oliveira is going to talk about conus peptides and neurosciences. So I think I sent the announcement, and I know it's posted in was it posted in the faculty lounge or in the PAASE website? So
yes, it is also, yeah, that's right. Posted at the Filipino Scientist Facebook page.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
and that's that's sponsored by the newest medical school in the Philippines, the Manila Times. College, College of Medicine.
Right. Thank you so much. There is also another webinar for next week on Friday at 7:30 a.m. Dr. Jane P.F. Bai from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration will be giving a lecture on systems pharmacology as it relates to precision medicine. That's how I remember the title. But please register for that webinar. It's also available at the Filipino Scientist Facebook page, and we'll make sure to remind everyone via email to please register. This has been really very illuminating, very enlightening sessions for us, especially for me, who's not in the field of health or medicine. But I know even if you're in the field, because of the so broad, area, of research, it's always really very educational to sit in and listen to research in the health area. In this particular webinar, I am really gratified because Dr. Kure talked about the community-based, health research, which is also one of the things that we consider very, very important in my field, in community psychology. So thank you very much, everyone, and see you again very soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you,
day.
Dr. Kure. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Santiago.
Thank you. Thank you, Eileen. Thank you, Mario.
Thank you, Eileen. Thank you,
Thank you,
Dr.
Eileen.
Ned Herbosa.
Thank you, folks. Thank you.
Eileen,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. See you again soon.
Hmm?